Hey, what's up, guys? Little man with a big opinion here. So, scrolling through the news this morning, I was very happy that I got to go camping this weekend. Hope you enjoyed the shorts. It was very nice to just take a step back from everything that happened last week and, spend some time in the woods. It was also very nice to be able to teach some first aid to my scouts and uh, teach some swimming. We all got in about a quarter mile of swimming, and then we just goofed around and had some fun. But in the first aid part, it was very good to make a makeshift stretcher and then have them carry me 100, 200 yards, and then switch out and showing, how easy it is with two people versus one person versus four people. Um, and even for the older ones that had already completed that merit badge, it was, it's something that, even once you've learned a skill and you've practiced it, it's a good skill to always, refresh yourself on. Looking at the news this morning, there's a few things that stick out to me. Uh, the first one is this article from Politico. The whole thing's screwed up. Farmers in deep red Pennsylvania struggle to find workers. And from what I can tell, this isn't just one spot. Uh, the general gist of the story is several dairy cow farms and just other farmers in general don't have the illegal immigrant workers that they previously had. Uh, and this guy is one of the first ones to essentially say Americans don't really want to do this work. Um, the ones that he is finding, it's great. There's not enough people. Um, we as a society have kind of, told ourselves that that work is above us or beneath us, not above us. And so it can be seen as a problem. Um, they're specifically talking about a organic dairy farm that's struggling with this. Um, this milk isn't, milk that I drink. It's not from my area, but I think it goes into that really, really big push that we've had for a long time of you got to go to college to be successful. Um, a lot of areas are walking back the idea of college. I think there's been a lot of push by different people. Charlie Kirk was one of them, saying a lot of what you're going to college for is, you're getting a piece of paper that costs $100,000, and you could probably do that job without a degree. Or you're specifically going for something that probably shouldn't cost that much and is kind of useless. Politico also, I mean, they put a left-wing spin on this, saying it's Trump's fault. From a prepping perspective, food prices might go up a little bit. Stuff might get wasted. I think our system will eventually correct itself. It's going to be rough for a little bit. And as a prepper, I was talking with one of the adults this weekend, and he doesn't remember where he heard the phrase, but I'm gonna coin it on this channel because I like it. And it's prepping for Tuesday, not doomsday. Because, after we got to talking about it, he is, very much a prepper. The putting aside food and water storage and, practicing with his firearms. And, after I finished teaching them first aid, he was asking me, because I've got a pretty substantial kit put together, and I was explaining, $10, $15 here and there, and, just adding it together, it eventually turns into a fairly, robust little kit. And, I had everything laid out. Oh. He took pictures of it, and, he was saying, with the next paycheck, that's what we're going to, that's what I'm going to spend some money on. And I told him, if he's got any questions, he can talk to me at Scouts. We can get together at a different point, and I'll answer everything that he wants. Did point him towards the YouTube channel. I don't know if he was one of the new subscribers this weekend or not. But, if you're watching this, I think you're doing a pretty good job for someone that I had no idea that's what you were doing. So the next thing that I saw, let's pull up the article. I used CNN for this one. I'm not going to pay any money to read articles. Romania condemns irresponsible Moscow after Russian drones breach its airspace. So, this is the second NATO country to have Russian drones enter its airspace. I had someone comment on my last video saying, why do we believe Poland? And I told him, out of all of the European countries, I probably believe Poland the most. I think they are one of the only countries that has, really taken to heart how they've been bullied in the past. They get attacked from two sides during World War II. They're basically under Soviet rule for, decades. They've really only truly been doing their own thing for about 30 years. In the span of the last 100 years. They're the only NATO country spending what they're supposed to be spending on their military. I think it's, something to believe. I'm not one to really believe Ukraine on this, even though, Zelensky, he wrote on X, "Today, Romania scrambled combat aircraft because of a Russian drone in its airspace. According to the current data, the drone penetrated about 10 kilometers, roughly 6 miles, into Romanian territory and operated in NATO airspace for around 50 minutes. Um, they want more sanctions on Russia. You know, I would like the war in Russia to, or the war in Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine, to end. Um, you know, the tinfoil hat version of me, kind of says, maybe this is an op. We're probably not really gonna know 100% the answer. But if Romania is saying it's happened, I'm kind of inclined to believe it happened. Over listening to Russia say, no, it didn't happen. So, take it with a grain of salt. Other, thinking about World War I or World War II, it didn't start overnight. It was the span of several years. So, maybe 100 years from now, when they're teaching this history, that'll get a sentence. Where for several months leading up to, the next conflict, there was drone incursions. We really don't know. Israel is continuing to, divide the U.S., divide the rest of the world. They called for Gaza to evacuate, or Gaza City to evacuate. There's about 1 million people who live there. They claim about 300,000 have left. I think Israel was definitely trying to send a message of, we're gonna wipe out Hamas. I think the problem with today's, kind of terrorists is it just takes, one accidental death for you to create 5 to 10 more. It's probably not something that is going to go their way. It's going to take a long time. It needs to be done surgically. And the way they're currently doing it, not a lot of people are happy about it. I'll give them, the credit that they're doing something rather than nothing. But we'll have to see on that. I look at all of this and I see regional conflict. And regional conflict can very easily turn into a global conflict. So many people have agreements with each other. Other people are seeing, weakness in this area, so I want to try to exploit it. So, I mean, there's a whole lot of uncertainty. I'm going to continue to purchase food and water. I'm going to get the chicken coop finished as quickly as I can. Buying the ammo, working out, doing all of those things to be at the best possible position that I can be, before the switch is flipped. If you're not doing that, I think you probably should be doing that. I would want to be as close to 100% as I could if something bad happens, and not having to play catch up while it's happening. Let me know your thoughts down below. Should we be doing more? Is what we're doing enough? Sharing the channel with your friends and family helps out. The more people around you that are prepared, the easier we'll be able to weather whatever issue that happens. If you've got a decent workout, put it in the comments down below. I'll try it out. But like the video if you enjoy the content, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of it. And with that, I'll catch you on the next one.